Is South Carolina actually cheaper than Texas, Arizona, or Florida to retire in? I'm going to cover all the specifics in this video. I did all the deep research for you so that you don't have to do it. There's a ton of things that you need to consider when you're thinking about cost of living in different states. So let's go ahead and start with the first factor, which is housing. I went and looked at the national average according to Redfin before doing this video. Redfin put that the national average for the US was $443,462. The crazy thing is that all four of the states that we're going to be talking about today are actually below the national average. So all of these from a housing standpoint are more affordable. Of course, all of these are going to vary based on the cities that you move to, but I looked at the state averages. I realized this after editing. I meant to say median, so this is the median price point for all of the cities and the US. Texas ended up being our most affordable state, then followed by South Carolina, Florida, and then Arizona. Since we're already talking about homes, let's go ahead and talk about property tax values. What we did with this is we ran a calculation from a state perspective and tried to figure out the effective tax rate, so the percentage of what you actually pay for that home. What we found is that South Carolina has the lowest effective tax percentage, followed by Arizona, then Florida, and then Texas. Texas having some of the highest property taxes in the entire country. I wanted to make these numbers really tangible for you, so what I did is I looked at the median price in each state and the effective tax percentage to give you an idea of what you might be paying every single year for your taxes. South Carolina, again, came in at the lowest, and it was a little under $1,800. To be exact, $1,788 a year. Arizona then came in next, between $1,800 and $2,460 per year. There were some places that it's a disclaimer where Arizona might have been a smidge cheaper than South Carolina on an effective tax percentage, but it wasn't the vast majority of the state. So overall, Arizona was the second lowest. Now, when we switch over to Florida, it looked like taxes were going to be somewhere between $3,190 up to about $3,477 a year. In Texas, even though it has the lowest home values, because the tax rate is so high, the taxes came in at $5,925 a year. All four of these states are really popular retirement destinations, so I realized that's something that I should add to this video. The great news is all four of these states do offer some benefits for those retirees, and specifically most of those are tied to an age requirement, typically around 65, but it does vary by each state. So let's go ahead and start with South Carolina. South Carolina offers something called the homestead exemption for people that have been citizens of South Carolina for at least 1 year and are over the age of 65 that own their home. It exempts the first $50,000 of your property's value on your taxes. Now let's move to Florida. Florida has something called Save Our Homes Cap, which basically allows for additional low-income senior homestead up to $50,000. This is not statewide, it's not automatic, and it does vary by the counties based on the research that we've done. Texas offers something for people over the age of 65 as well, with an extra $10,000 school district exemption and a school tax ceiling, which basically what that means is it freezes your taxes once you turn 65. The local government may also offer some freezes or exemptions as well, depending on what county you're in Texas. In Arizona, there wasn't an across-the-board exemption, but there is something called a limited property value freeze that seniors can meet based on income, occupancy rules, and it freezes your valuation for 3 years and is a renewable incentive that you have to continue to do. Since property taxes are such a big topic, we wanted to do a really good deep dive for you. So the other thing we want to look at is when your property taxes could be reassessed. In South Carolina, property taxes are reassessed upon a purchase. So the new purchaser gets a reassessed value, and then they're reassessed every 5 years on a specific schedule. This is not 5 years from when you bought your home. It could be based on whenever you bought in that window of 5 years, but every 5 years it happens. One of the things that South Carolina has done is they've put a 15% maximum cap in how much your evaluation of your property can go up, not necessarily on your taxes, but a 15% increase on your home during that 5-year reassessment so that they can keep homes affordable for people that already own them. Florida reassesses taxes every year, and there's a 3% cap on those who have what they call their homestead exemption, which is people who live in the home as their primary residence, what we refer to in South Carolina. It's a 10% for someone who owns it as a secondary home or an investment property. And just like in South Carolina and Florida, the property value resets once the new homeowner purchases the home. Texas has some different rules because it's not fully on just a statewide level. It varies based on the counties and the cities. but at least every 3 years you're going to have a reassessment on your property. Texas also sets a cap as well for 10% if it is your primary residence or your homestead, as they refer to it in their state, per year. It's 20% as of 2025 for a temporary ruling for those that are owning these properties as an investment that are under $5 million. Moving to Arizona, there is a 5% cap and increase annually, so they reassess taxes every single year. One thing that I did find interesting that I didn't see in the other states is that in Arizona, this can reset based on additions or modifications to the property. These caps were super important to people as the real estate market in 2020 and beyond substantially increased, because it really kept those homeowners whose property shot up in value significantly paying a tax bill that they're much more comfortable with than what a new owner would pay for those taxes today. So this is something that's really important to pay attention to if you're working with a certain income or you don't want to see massive increases to your bills over time. Now let's go ahead and talk about state income tax. Florida and Texas have been popular for years because of the fact that they don't have state income tax. When we look at South Carolina and we look at Arizona, both of those states do have a state income tax. Arizona has a flat 2.5% state income tax. South Carolina has a tiered state income tax setup, the highest tier being 6%. Depending on when you're watching this video, this tax structure could have changed. South Carolina currently has several different bills that are in place where they're trying to reduce state income taxes. So we'll see how that ultimately develops. Back to the current plan as of recording this video. In South Carolina for the year of 2025, there's 0% taxes up to $3,560 of your income. It's a 3% tax rate from $3,560 up to $17,830. And then there's a 6% taxation on anything above $17,830. There are some key benefits that I must point out about South Carolina's tax structure for those 65 plus. The first, Social Security is not taxed in South Carolina. And third, for those 65 plus, there's a $15,000 deduction on your income per tax filer. You should always consult with a CPA whenever you're talking about taxes, but this is the information that we have and that we could find for you. And as you can see here in South Carolina, there's a significant amount of reductions that you can receive if you're somebody in that retirement age bracket. The next factor we have to consider is homeowners insurance. This has become a really big topic nationally as homeowners insurance premiums have skyrocketed recently. Especially in Florida. Florida is the state that has the highest homeowner insurance premiums in the entire country. So that makes Florida the least affordable state from a homeowner's insurance perspective. Texas also has some very expensive homeowner insurance premiums, especially in those areas that are near water or that are known for hail and wind damage. Both Arizona and South Carolina are lower than the national average premiums for the homes that they insure. Now let's talk about vehicles and registration. In South Carolina, you pay a title fee and you pay an annual fee for your car. So this is assessed as personal property and it's a tax. And South Carolina has one of the highest taxes in the entire country for this. In Arizona, there's no personal tax on cars, but they do charge an annual vehicle license tax. It's based on the car's depreciated value. In Texas, personal use vehicles are not generally subject to taxes, but you'll still have to pay your registration and sales tax at the purchase. Florida relies on registration and title fees rather than an annual vehicle property tax, which is handled by the county collectors. All four of these states have sales tax. Florida had an effective tax percentage of around 7% of the goods that you purchase. Of course, this all varies as in all of these states based on where you're located. South Carolina has a 7.5% tax. Texas was up to 8.25% and Arizona was around 8%. When we looked at the utility costs for all four of these states, they were all pretty similar. South Carolina and Arizona were slightly more affordable than Florida and Texas. There was different areas where each of these would shine. Ultimately, in electricity, we saw that Arizona and South Carolina tended to be a little bit more affordable, with Texas being the most expensive. Water bills tend to be pretty similar overall, with the exception being that Arizona tends to have higher water bills than the other three states. The next category that we looked at is healthcare expenses. So we went and looked at the open marketplace to see what the average premium was for a person living in each of these states. Arizona ranked the most affordable, came in at $529 per person. Florida was the least affordable at $647 per person. South Carolina came in close to Arizona at $538 and Texas was around $610. Next, we looked at what the average costs were for people that lived in these states for going out for a night to eat. South Carolina was the most affordable at $2,601 per year, or $217 a month. The least affordable was Florida at $271 a month, $3,253 for the year. There you have it, a complete breakdown of each state and what it costs to live there and how each state compares to each other. There's a ton of different scenarios and each person's is customized to them and what their situation is. So make sure you're talking with local experts for the place that you're thinking of moving to. Make sure you're talking to CPAs to make sure you understand the tax implications of where you're thinking of moving to. We specialize in helping people relocate to Greenville, South Carolina. What we find if they're doing all of this data, where does it make the most sense for people to want to move to South Carolina? Of course, this isn't normally a complete what is the most affordable place to live equation. You also want to factor in lifestyle. And we have tons of videos on our channel talking about the lifestyle, what it's like to live in Greenville, South Carolina. But what we find is people who want to find more affordable homes, they want to pay some of the lowest property taxes in the area, and they want to have a good quality of life and take advantage of these benefits when they're retiring. That could be a great fit for South Carolina when you're thinking about a potential move and relocation, especially in your retirement years. For someone that wants to buy a second home here, you need to know that South Carolina taxes properties differently based on if it's your primary residence or if it's a secondary home, a vacation property, and it has massive tax implications. I've discussed this in other videos in the past, but the quick rule of thumb is it almost triples your taxes if it's not your primary home. So something to watch out for and something to consider if you're not going to buy a home as your primary residence here in our state. If you want to learn more about what it's like to relocate to South Carolina, all of our contact information is down below. We'd be happy to talk you through this and have a strategy session with you.